Alrighty, y'all. Hello and welcome to How the World Views America. Well, at least according to TikTok. So I gotta buckle up and strap in for this one. Not sure how it's gonna go, but we'll try our best. Here we go.
Do you want to visit us anymore?
No, just flat out no. And the ones who do want to go to the US, it's because they do not truly understand what it's like to actually live in the US. So I'm gonna break it down for you. The American dream is dead. America is for the wealthy and nobody else.
Yeah, I agree. And did I misunderstand? I thought at the beginning, I think visiting the US and living in the US is two different things, right? I mean, at least I don't know if she meant that or not. But for me, I think visiting here would still be fun. But living here is pretty rough right now. It has been for better part of a decade.
Another thing is, I'm afraid of being unalived at every single point. Like, I step out of the house, whether it be the grocery store, at a restaurant, it doesn't matter.
That's
And
sad.
I'm a privileged person. I am a white person, and I am afraid of the pew-pews. I cannot even imagine.
That's really sad that she feels like that because, think what you will, say what you will about any country, right? It's not like that here, right? Yes, there's bad headlines on the news here and there, right? There's been some bad events you can point out, sure. I hate it. Everyone hates it. It's terrible. But, millions of people go outside every day here and live their life and nothing happens, right? There's a lot we should be concerned about and quite frankly embarrassed about when it comes to rankings for the US. But to think that you can't go outside without the risk of the second you step outside getting your face blown away, I think that's just sad if someone actually feels like that. That's not going to happen,
Imagine what it's like for people who don't have my skin tone. Another thing, it's very hard for me to make friends being outside the US, like even for a year. Like, it's one of two things. Either they get this look on their face where I'm just like, okay, they just really don't care, or they see me as bragging. Also, the food is designed to make us sick, and
True.
don't even get me started on healthcare.
Well, it's not healthcare, it's a sick care model. That's all you need to say.
The best way I've heard it described to make sense for the average person is that we're similar to the Fire Nation in Avatar: The Last Airbender. So the Fire Nation was told about how great they were
Yeah, I
and
can see
how
that.
war was one way to kind of spread their greatness and share it with everyone else. But that's not really the truth, right? The Fire Nation just went around spreading war because they wanted to take stuff from other people. So this kind of draws parallels with the current United States. We kind of claim that we're for freedom and democracy and everything, but when you look at where we start wars, it's usually for an economic or political reason. Do you think it's a coincidence that we just happen to start wars in all these places that are very oil rich? But
Yeah.
the reason the US...
By the way, remember, this is important. I think it's important to separate, heads of countries and politicians from people and governments from people, right? And that goes for a lot of different places, right, on Earth. Yeah, most Americans don't want wars. They don't like them. They don't support them. We didn't vote for wars, right? Like all these wars that keep happening over the past 30 years, especially, it is ridiculous. And trust me, a lot of Americans out on the streets are talking mad shit about, whatever person in government wants to start a war, wants to go here and do this, mission that's going to turn into a war. So I totally agree with you. If you think America's got their handed too much, police in the world, doing all this war stuff, I hate it too.
is hated worldwide is because we go around doing a bunch of sketchy shit.
I'm curious on Europeans' opinions on why they don't like Americans.
I'm an American that's been living in Amsterdam for about 8 years now. I'm completely integrated. My partner is Dutch, which is why I moved out here. I speak the language. I've got primarily Dutch friends. And here are some of the reasons why I have found that the Dutch, particularly, don't like American. So the Dutch mentality is all about nuchterheid is the word that they use. And it's about being down to earth. It's about being level-headed. It's about being just like everybody else.
It's very
Nobody is
admirable.
better than anybody else. And if you look at the American mentality, it's completely the opposite. It's about trying to be better than everybody else, trying to be the star, trying your hardest to be something. They find that type of mentality completely rude, dishonest, and how they like to call it, fake. The second biggest reason is because Americans are brought up with the idea that America is better than everybody else. This savior complex that they saved everybody. They are the example, and that couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah, that's easy to fall victim to here in the US. That's a theme I've said for years. Look at my videos from 2 or 3 years ago. It's a theme I always talk about is basically, you know, I was born here, I'm from here, and there's a lot I do love about the US. You know, I am an American, right? But I'm very critical of it because I feel like we should be better, and I feel like there's a lot of problems here, and it's also tiring hearing for decades, we're the best, we're the best, we're the best, and we're not. It's just you know, being confident in yourself is a good thing, right? That's a good trait. Like, you want to have confidence and be, you know, a fan of yourself, but it's definitely unhealthy to think you're the best at everything all the time. It's just not healthy. It's not good. It kind of sets yourself up for failure, actually. Honestly, I think with social media, there's a lot of bad things that come from social media, and there's also a lot of good things. I think Americans as a whole, compared to maybe like 20 years ago, are a little more realistic and a little bit like, hey, you know, they might like a lot of things about the U.S., but they're also critical. They're more critical and they're more aware of other cultures and other countries, which is a good thing. That's literally the point of this channel. That's what I do, is I try to learn and soak up the most knowledge and history and culture pieces and facts and trivia and whatever about different places other than the U.S. I just find it therapeutic. I find it nice and soothing. It's great to learn that there's a whole world out there. It's a beautiful world. Yeah, American education does seem to, you know, it covers a little bit of everything, but it really does, you know, focus on the U.S. And U.S. history definitely paints the U.S. as the hero, like you would
If you look at
expect.
things like gun control, healthcare, safety, equality, I mean, the U.S. is the worst. Not admitting to that is something that they completely hate. And lastly, I don't know why, but there is this view that Americans are dumb. We are just dumb to them. I think that's something we're never going to be able to change. They're always just going to view the American mentality, the American mindset as just dumb. After 8 years living here, I can safely say that I totally agree with the Dutch mentality, and I share their view on us Americans, sadly. As much as I love my American friends and my American family, I don't love my country, and I only saw freedom and opportunity until I left.
That we do here in the US that no one else in the entire world does. Here in the US, we incarcerate people under the age of 18, 13 and up, for life. So there are teenagers that get sentenced to prison for life.
Wow, I haven't heard that exact statistic before. I've definitely heard the famous statistics like that we have, you know, send more people to prison than any other country, right? The incarceration rate here is off the charts, right? So I've definitely heard that just in general. I did not know that about like 13 to 18-year-olds. Whoa.
They can die in the prison. They will die in prison.
Wow.
In 2020, an average of 1,162 children were arrested every single day. And, as you can imagine, because it's exactly the same with adults, Black children are disproportionately affected. 22 states in the US have yet to ban children getting life in prison without the possibility of parole. I'll give you a guess as to which some of those states are.
Here's a sample of what
Wow, I wasn't aware of that. Is that really A thing? Holy smokes. I will try to look up some facts on that later. That is pretty alarming. Yeah, this place is crazy with prisons. I mean, that's what they get. I mean, there's some state prisons, but of course, a lot of prisons are private. So, what good is a prison with no one in it, right? It's everything's capitalism and corporate here. Yay. Don't you love when a country can monetize putting people in prison and keeping people sick?
The rest of the world thinks of the United States. Green means you have a favorable opinion of the US, blue, unfavorable. A lot of these tie into current events, like Poland's sky-high 93% rating, which makes sense given our mutual support for Ukraine.
Okay, so Poland, hello. Poland likes us, that's good. It's a little more favorable throughout most countries in Europe, so that's decent to hear. Now, it's like half and half, right? But it's a little more on the green side. But that's fair, more than fair. Hungary, not a fan of us. Okay. I mean, I'd say this is fair, right? I'm honestly surprised it's a little more green than I would have even thought from a lot of these countries. Australia sitting at almost 50-50.
The overall results will be a bit surprising to those of us who remember the 2000s and the unpopularity of the Iraq War. Today, nearly twice as many respondents have a favorable view of the US as an unfavorable view. I think the result that's going to surprise Americans the most is just how unpopular we are in Australia, where nearly half the population has a negative view of the United States.
By the way, let me just preface that for any Australians watching. First of all, I love Australia. I love Australians. Let me say, Australians have been some of the warmest, honest, awesome, just feel-good people I've ever met. And I don't care if it's through online or what. I just had to throw that in there. Like, you guys are awesome. And everyone in this community is actually from pretty much every country listed on here. I have viewers from everywhere. It's kind of cool. And everyone is super awesome. And I love it. I love that we have a good community here.
And that's in direct contrast to how warmly Americans view Australia. If you take the two positive categories and combine them from this survey, Australia is the top country.
True. If you combine the gray and blue, Americans love Australia. At like unanimously, holy smokes, 97. So 97% of Americans love Australia. That is a crazy high number. Wow.
That Americans view favorably. What gives? Why do they dislike the US so much down under? I have some thoughts. Not only am I a historian and a policy geek, but I spent every summer of my teenage years traveling around Australia. And the first thing to remember is that Australians all learned in history class that they spent the last century playing second fiddle to the imperial ambitions of their British colonial overlords and then on the behalf of America in Vietnam and the Gulf War. For example, one of the biggest blockbusters of the 1980s was the movie about the Battle of Gallipoli, starring none other than a young hottie Mel Gibson over here, where British officers callously threw Australian troops at prepared Turkish trenches.
Oh, geez.
In the 1960s, Australians very much felt that once again, Australian troops were being sent, this time to Vietnam, to fight for the imperial ambitions, this time of America instead of Britain. The largest per capita anti-war protests in the world were actually in Australia.
Wow.
And so for many Australians in the 90s and the aughts, it felt like Australia was repeating that history all over again, this time in the Middle East. But the thing that actually hurt the most as a teenager in Australia, especially in the 90s, was a sense that the US wasn't playing fair with Australian farmers. Now, you and I don't spend a lot of time thinking about agricultural policy.
I've heard this before. I'm going to let him explain this. It's weird. Australian lamb, right? The commercials. I love lamb. I don't know why it's not a thing here. How weird. Like America and it's weird, like world politics stuff I don't know about centuries, but for decades, I meant to say decades. You know, I always complain about the chicken tax, right? How we don't get a bunch of small SUVs and trucks because of the chicken tax, right? And it all has to do with the same thing. 50, 60 years ago, some, childish political BS is why we don't get that kind of stuff. And I think it's the same deal with the lamb meat, too. Australian lamb meat is phenomenal. But because of government BS, regular people suffer for it, you
But
know?
it's a big deal in Australia.
weird.
It is a net exporter of all kinds of agricultural goods, especially sheep. I remember sitting in a ute, a truck, with an Australian farmer who was just spitting mad at Bill Clinton for hypocritically lowering tariffs with Mexico and Canada as part of NAFTA, but raising tariffs on lamb exports from Australia. The US is used to getting its own way regardless of what anybody else thinks about it. But imperial entanglements and trade protectionism makes us enemies where we should be making friends.
America will bomb your country until there's nothing left, then come back 20 years later and make a movie about how sad their soldiers got from doing it. You're not
That is painfully true. Ouch.
wrong. Let's talk about the American military movie complex. And I haven't even watched this yet, but isn't that exactly the plot of Cherry? Generally, war movies are probably like my least favorite genre. 1917 is one that stands out. That's pretty damn good.
You know what? I'll admit, I have not watched a lot of war movies. I've seen some. But then there's like the ones he's naming I have not seen. So I won't comment on these because I haven't seen them.
But yeah, I think we all know how a lot of these movies are just used for propaganda anyway. But what is a lot less commonly known is that the Department of Defense sponsors so many movies that aren't even war movies, which then also get used as means of propaganda. Because if you want to use military equipment in your movie, you have to apply directly to the Department of Defense, and who then have to approve your script. They have criteria that you have to meet to even get approved, so a lot of the time, military cannot look like the villains in your movie.
Wow. So even like blockbusters like Transformers have to have the Department of Defense involved because of the military scenes.
Transformers, DoD sponsored. Godzilla, DoD sponsored.
Wow.
DoD sponsored. DoD sponsored. And if you wait to the credits, you can see it. Top Gun is the best example of this because this whole movie is just used to rebrand the American military after Vietnam.
America is not what
That is crazy. I didn't know that, but it totally makes sense. Oh my God.
it once was. I've got some bad news for
I'm gonna
people who
leave
don't
that
travel
alone.
internationally. The world hates us.
Don't get me going.
Okay, we're not the big dogs. We don't have the clout that we once had. We aren't even like statistically on top of anything, education
No, we're not
or anything.
statistically, no.
And
We're definitely on the downward trend.
I've traveled a lot internationally. Over COVID, obviously, I stopped. And there's always been an underlying tone that America is dangerous. But, you know, we run Hollywood, so a lot of the media that is consumed by people in other countries is still American. However, I'm on my first international trip since COVID, and it has gotten worse. I have heard from every nationality that America is dangerous, but I arrived in Indonesia, which is a country that, you know, a lot of people aim to get out of and go to America. And the first thing that my taxi driver says to me is that he's afraid of America because of all the poppy seeds that we're taking and all the jazz powder that people are using. And he's convinced that people are walking around the US like zombies. Because that's what's on the internet. That's what these people are seeing. And I think it's a really big lesson if you are sheltered and are not leaving the US. We don't got it. Like, we don't got it anymore. People don't want to live in America. People aren't eager to live in America. When I was in Europe,
Well, no, I mean, I'm not surprised. There's so many problems, and there's a lot of crises happening here, and cost of living is unbelievable. I don't know how you would expect to come here and get started and try and survive this craziness, right? So no, I'm definitely not surprised people don't want to come here currently.
a lot of the kids said their parents wouldn't let them go to America because they were afraid they were going to get popped by the police.
And that's sad, right? Like I said, I don't. So I'm going to stop myself, and I just noticed in editing I missed the part where she said by police. So I agree with her that there's a big police problem here in the U.S., right? There's good cops, but unfortunately there's a lot of bad cops as well. And nationwide, this is a thing, right? There's bad body cam footage all over. And it's just a very heated, concerning issue. And when I look at how police videos from other countries, how police handle things is a lot more calm and civil. And here, a lot of police tend to escalate things and just go about it all wrong. So I totally understand concern from the outside looking in for that kind of thing. It is scary, and people are not happy about it here. As for general violence and stuff like that, yes, crime does exist here, unfortunately, and it usually seems to be a lot higher than a lot of other countries. And, that's something I just can't deny. It's a sad reality, but it's not so bad as some people, on the other hand, make it seem, to where you walk outside and you fear for your life. It's like you're outside your front door. It's a little extreme. But overall, the crime thing and the police thing are definitely issues here, and they need to be dealt with, and it just doesn't seem to be getting any traction. All right, well, there's definitely a lot more from that compilation. I'm going to cut it there. This will be linked down below so you can check out the whole thing if you're curious, and definitely browse their channel. That was interesting, and you know what? Not, how do I say that? Not as bad as I thought. Like, I think I'm agree with a lot of this, so I'm aware of, like, a lot of the problems, and again, I try to have a healthy dose, or a healthy mindset rather, of, I still have hope for the country. I still love my country, blah, blah, blah. But I also am very critical of it, and I'm aware of the problems. I mean, just like any American, like, we're all living problems right now. It's just a crazy time. The news cycle here is outrageous. The cost of living is outrageous. The price of housing, everything. I could go on. I'm not going to go on right now. That was pretty interesting. I will say that. I hope you found it interesting as well. I'm pretty sure the comment section will be fascinating. I appreciate you watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. My name is Ian. You're watching IWrocker. Until next time, y'all, stay safe out there. I'll catch you later.